What if I told you that your inability to focus isn't your fault? What if the reason you can't concentrate, the reason you feel scattered and overwhelmed, the reason you start projects but never finish them isn't because you lack willpower or discipline, but because you're fighting a war you didn't even know existed? Right now, at this very moment, there's a battle raging for the most valuable resource you possess. Not your money, not your time, but your attention. And you're losing. Every notification, every ping, every pop-up, every algorithm is designed by the brightest minds on the planet with one singular goal: to steal your focus and keep it hostage. The average person checks their phone 1.44 times per day. That's once every 6 and 12 minutes during waking hours. Your attention span has shrunk from 12 seconds in the year 2000 to 8 seconds today. You now have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. And while you're scrolling, switching, and constantly reacting to digital stimuli, the top 1% of achievers are doing something completely different. They've mastered the art of sustained focus. And it's giving them an unfair advantage in every area of life. But here's what the productivity gurus won't tell you. Willpower isn't enough. Motivation isn't enough. You can't just decide to focus better and expect it to happen. Focus is a skill, and like any skill, it can be trained, developed, and mastered. The difference between those who struggle with distraction and those who achieve laser-like concentration isn't genetics or luck. It's knowledge and systematic training. This audiobook will teach you exactly how to reclaim your focus, eliminate distractions, and develop the kind of deep concentration that turns ordinary people into extraordinary achievers. By the time you finish this, you'll never think about attention the same way again. You'll have the tools to focus on command, work in deep flow states, and accomplish more in a few hours than most people do in entire weeks. But I need you to understand something critical. This isn't just about productivity. Your ability to focus determines the quality of your thoughts, the depth of your relationships, the level of your success, and ultimately the trajectory of your entire life. Master your focus and you master your future. Chapter 1: The Focus Crisis. We are living in the most distracted generation in human history. And most people don't even realize how severe the problem has become. They think their inability to concentrate is a personal failing, a character flaw, or simply the way things are in the modern world. But the truth is far more sinister and far more hopeful than they imagine. The focus crisis isn't an accident. It's by design. Every app on your phone, every website you visit, every digital platform you engage with has been engineered by teams of neuroscientists, behavioral psychologists, and addiction specialists whose sole job is to capture and hold your attention for as long as possible. They call it the attention economy, and your focus is the product being sold. Consider this. The average knowledge worker checks email every 6 minutes. Students can't read for more than a few minutes without feeling the urge to check their phones. Even when people try to have conversations, they're simultaneously scrolling, multitasking, and mentally elsewhere. We've created a culture of continuous partial attention where everyone is always somewhat distracted, never fully present, and rarely capable of sustained deep work. But here's what's truly alarming. This isn't just affecting your productivity. Chronic distraction is rewiring your brain. Every time you respond to a notification, check social media, or switch between tasks, you're strengthening neural pathways that make you more distractible. You're literally training your brain to have a shorter attention span. Neuroscientists call this attention residue, the mental fog that lingers when your focus has been fractured. The cost of this crisis is staggering. Studies show that after an interruption, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to fully regain focus. If you're interrupted just 4 times per hour, you never actually reach a state of deep concentration. You spend your entire day in a shallow, reactive mode, skimming the surface of your potential instead of diving deep into meaningful work. Most people accept this as the new normal. They've forgotten what it feels like to be truly focused, to work in a state of flow, to think deeply about complex problems without the constant urge to check their devices. They've normalized distraction to such a degree that they don't even recognize what they've lost. But the top performers, the 1% of achievers who are pulling ahead in every field, they understand something critical. In a world where everyone is distracted, the person who can focus has an enormous competitive advantage. While others are reacting to notifications and drowning in digital noise, focused individuals are solving complex problems, creating breakthrough innovations, and building extraordinary careers and businesses. The science is clear. Sustained attention is the foundation of all high-level cognitive work. Whether you're trying to learn a new skill, solve a difficult problem, create something original, or build deep relationships, it all requires the ability to focus deeply for extended periods. Without this ability, you're forever stuck in the shallow end of human experience and achievement. The good news is that focus, like physical fitness, can be trained. Your brain has neuroplasticity, the ability to form new neural connections throughout your life. Every time you practice sustained attention, you're strengthening the neural networks responsible for concentration. Every time you resist a distraction, you're building mental muscle that makes future focus easier. But most people approach focus training all wrong. They try to rely on willpower, which is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day. They attempt to eliminate all distractions without understanding the deeper psychological and neurological mechanisms at play. They focus on symptoms rather than root causes, which is why their efforts inevitably fail. The transformation begins when you understand that mastering focus isn't about having superhuman discipline. It's about understanding how attention works, why you get distracted, and how to systematically train your brain for sustained concentration. It's about creating environments that support deep work, developing habits that protect your mental energy, and learning specific techniques that allow you to enter flow states on command. This isn't just about being more productive at work. The ability to focus deeply affects every area of your life. It determines the quality of your relationships because truly connecting with others requires presence and attention. It influences your emotional well-being because a scattered mind is an anxious mind. It shapes your capacity for learning and growth because all skill development requires sustained practice and reflection. When you master focus, you don't just get more done. You experience life more fully. You think more clearly. You solve problems more effectively. You create more meaningful work. You build stronger relationships. You develop skills faster. You achieve goals that once seemed impossible. You become the person you've always known you could be but couldn't access because your attention was constantly fragmented. The journey to focus mastery begins with a simple recognition. Your current level of distraction isn't normal. It isn't acceptable, and it isn't permanent. You have the power to reclaim your attention, retrain your brain, and develop the kind of laser-like concentration that separates high achievers from everyone else. But it requires commitment, strategy, and the right knowledge. Chapter 2. The Neuroscience of Attention. Your brain wasn't designed for the modern world. For millions of years, human survival depended on a completely different type of attention than what's required for success today. Understanding this fundamental mismatch is crucial for developing strategies that actually work in the 21st century. The human attention system evolved to keep our ancestors alive in dangerous environments. Your brain is constantly scanning for threats, novelty, and opportunities. This served our predecessors well when they needed to notice the rustling of a predator in the bushes or spot ripe fruit on a distant tree. But in today's information-rich environment, this same system is working against you. Your brain processes attention through two primary networks: the executive attention network and the default mode network. The executive attention network is responsible for focused goal-directed thinking. This is what's active when you're working on a complex problem, learning a new skill, or engaged in deep conversation. The default mode network, on the other hand, is what's running when your mind wanders, when you're daydreaming, or when you're not actively focused on a specific task. Here's the critical insight. These two networks cannot be active simultaneously. When your default mode network is running, which happens automatically when you're not consciously directing your attention, your executive attention network goes offline. This is why mind wandering and high cognitive performance are mutually exclusive. You cannot think deeply while your mind is wandering, and you cannot access your full intellectual potential without sustained activation of your executive attention network. Modern neuroscience has revealed that the brain regions responsible for attention are remarkably plastic. The anterior cingulate cortex, which plays a crucial role in attention control, can be strengthened through specific training. The prefrontal cortex, your brain's CEO, becomes more efficient at directing attention when challenged with focused practice. Even the insula, which helps you maintain awareness of your internal state, develops greater capacity when you regularly practice sustained attention. But here's where it gets fascinating. Your brain doesn't just adapt to how you use your attention. It adapts to the speed and intensity of stimulation you regularly expose it to. If you constantly consume rapid-fire digital content, switch between tasks frequently, and respond immediately to every notification, your brain optimizes for rapid task switching and immediate gratification. The neural pathways for sustained attention literally weaken from disuse. This is why people who spend hours on social media find it increasingly difficult to read books. Why constant multitaskers struggle with deep work, and why heavy technology users report feeling restless and anxious when forced to focus on single tasks for extended periods. They've inadvertently trained their brains for distraction. The dopamine system plays a crucial role in this process. Dopamine isn't just the pleasure chemical. It's the seeking chemical. It drives you to pursue potential rewards, and it's released not when you get what you want but in anticipation of getting it. Social media platforms, video games, and other digital distractions hijack this system by providing variable reward schedules. The most addictive type of reinforcement known to psychology. Every notification, every like, every new piece of content provides a small hit of dopamine that makes you crave more stimulation. Over time, this constant stream of micro-rewards makes normal, sustained activities feel boring and unrewarding. Your brain becomes addicted to stimulation and resistant to the kind of patient, sustained effort required for deep work and meaningful achievement. But the plasticity that allows your brain to adapt to distraction also allows it to readapt to focus. When you consistently practice sustained attention, several remarkable changes occur. The prefrontal cortex becomes more efficient at filtering out irrelevant information. The anterior cingulate cortex develops greater capacity for maintaining attention on chosen targets. The default mode network becomes less active during focused work, reducing mind wandering and internal distraction. Perhaps most importantly, the brain's reward systems begin to recalibrate. When you regularly engage in sustained challenging work that provides meaningful outcomes, your dopamine system starts to find satisfaction in deep engagement rather than constant stimulation. The restless craving for novelty diminishes, and you develop the ability to find flow and satisfaction in sustained effort. This neuroplasticity-based transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it happens faster than most people realize. Studies show that focused attention training can produce measurable changes in brain structure and function in as little as 8 weeks. People who practice meditation, which is essentially attention training, show increased gray matter density in areas associated with learning, memory, and emotional regulation within 2 months of beginning practice. The key insight is that attention is not a fixed trait. It's a skill that can be developed through understanding and practice. Your current level of distractibility is not a permanent characteristic of your personality. It's the result of how you've trained your brain through your daily habits and choices. And just as you've unintentionally trained your brain for distraction, you can intentionally train it for sustained focus. Understanding the neuroscience of attention also reveals why conventional productivity advice often fails. Telling someone to just focus better is like telling someone to just be stronger without providing a workout routine. Focus is a muscle that must be trained systematically and progressively. It requires understanding the specific neural mechanisms involved in designing practices that effectively challenge and develop those systems. The most effective focus training targets multiple aspects of the attention system simultaneously. It strengthens your ability to direct attention where you choose, maintains that attention despite distractions, notices when attention has wandered, and returns focus to your chosen target. It builds tolerance for sustained effort, increases your capacity for deep engagement, and develops metacognitive awareness of your own attention states. This scientific understanding provides the foundation for everything else you'll learn in this audiobook. Every technique, every strategy, and every practice is based on how your brain actually works, not on wishful thinking or motivational platitudes. When you align your focus training with the realities of neuroscience, you get results that seem almost magical, but are actually just the natural consequence of working with your brain instead of against it. Chapter 3. Digital Warfare. You are under attack. Every moment you spend online, you're engaged in psychological warfare with some of the most sophisticated persuasion machines ever created. The apps on your phone, the websites you visit, and the platforms you engage with are not neutral tools. They are weapons in a battle for your most precious resource, your attention. The technology industry has invested billions of dollars in understanding exactly how to capture and hold human attention. They employ teams of neuroscientists, behavioral economists, addiction specialists, and psychological researchers whose only job is to make their products more engaging, more compelling, and more difficult to resist. They study slot machine psychology, variable reinforcement schedules, social validation mechanisms, and fear of missing out triggers. Their goal is simple: to make their products as addictive as possible. The techniques they use are not accidental. They are the result of decades of research into human psychology and neurochemistry. Every notification sound, every red notification badge, every pull to refresh mechanism, every infinite scroll feed has been carefully designed to trigger specific neurological responses that make you want to engage more frequently and for longer periods. Consider the psychology behind social media notifications. They arrive unpredictably, creating a variable reinforcement schedule that's more addictive than any consistent reward system. The anticipation of potential social validation activates the same neural pathways as gambling and drug addiction. The red notification badges create a sense of urgency and incompleteness that your brain interprets as a threat to social standing and connection. Email systems are designed to create anxiety and compulsion through artificial urgency. The constant influx of messages triggers your brain's threat detection system, making you feel like you need to respond immediately to avoid social or professional consequences. The preview notifications provide just enough information to create curiosity and anxiety without providing resolution, forcing you to check the full message to achieve psychological closure. Video platforms use autoplay features, recommended content algorithms, and cliffhanger preview thumbnails to keep you watching indefinitely. They analyze your viewing patterns to determine exactly what type of content will keep you engaged, creating personalized addiction algorithms that become more effective the more you use them. The platforms are designed to make stopping feel unnatural and continuing feel inevitable. News, websites, and apps exploit your brain's negativity bias, the evolutionary tendency to pay more attention to threatening information than positive information. They use fear-based headlines, breaking news alerts, and crisis-focused content to trigger stress responses that make you feel compelled to stay informed even when the information has no relevance to your actual life or well-being. Shopping platforms use scarcity, psychology, social proof mechanisms, and impulse triggering designed to encourage immediate purchases. Limited time offers create artificial urgency. Customer reviews and social proof features trigger herd mentality responses. One-click purchasing removes friction that might allow rational consideration. Recommendation algorithms create the illusion of personalized curation while actually driving you toward higher value purchases. Gaming applications employ the most sophisticated addiction psychology of all digital platforms. They use achievement systems, social comparison features, time-limited events, and progressive reward schedules to create powerful compulsion loops. Players become emotionally invested in virtual progress and social standing within game communities, making it extremely difficult to stop playing without feeling like they're losing something valuable. The cumulative effect of these persuasion techniques is a state of continuous partial attention that makes sustained focus nearly impossible. Your brain becomes addicted to stimulation and resistant to the patient, sustained effort required for deep work. You develop a tolerance to normal levels of engagement, requiring increasingly intense stimulation to feel satisfied or entertained. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of digital attention warfare is that it's largely invisible. Most people don't realize they're being manipulated. They assume their constant urges to check devices, scroll through feeds, and respond to notifications are natural behaviors rather than conditioned responses to sophisticated psychological manipulation. The first step in fighting back is recognition. You must understand that your impulses to engage with digital distractions are not organic desires. They are manufactured cravings created by technologies specifically designed to override your rational decision-making and create compulsive behaviors. Your phone isn't just a communication device. It's a sophisticated addiction machine that's been optimized to interrupt your thoughts and hijack your attention as frequently as possible. Once you recognize the nature of the battle, you can begin to develop countermeasures. The most effective strategies work at multiple levels. Environmental design that removes temptation. Behavioral interventions that break conditioned responses and cognitive techniques that help you maintain awareness of manipulation attempts. Environmental design means taking active control of your digital environment rather than accepting the default settings chosen by companies that profit from your distraction. Turn off all non-essential notifications. Remove social media apps from your phone. Use website blockers during focused work sessions. Create physical barriers between yourself and distracting technologies. Behavioral interventions involve replacing automatic digital habits with conscious choices. Instead of immediately responding to the urge to check your phone, pause and ask yourself what you're hoping to achieve. Rather than opening social media when you're bored, have alternative activities prepared when you feel the compulsion to consume digital content. Recognize it as a conditioned response and choose a different behavior. Cognitive techniques help you maintain awareness of when you're being manipulated and why certain digital experiences feel so compelling. Understanding the psychology behind persuasive design makes you less susceptible to its effects. Recognizing when your emotions are being triggered by artificial stimuli helps you make more rational choices about how to spend your attention. The goal isn't to eliminate all technology from your life. Technology can be an incredible tool for learning, communication, and creativity when used intentionally. The goal is to transform your relationship with technology from reactive consumption to intentional use. Instead of letting algorithms and notifications dictate how you spend your attention, you choose when, how, and why you engage with digital tools. This transformation requires recognizing that the attention economy is designed to extract value from your focus rather than provide value to your life. Every moment you spend mindlessly scrolling, responding to non-urgent notifications, or consuming digital content that doesn't align with your goals is a moment stolen from activities that could actually improve your life, advance your goals, and develop your potential. The companies profiting from your attention want you to believe that resistance is futile, that digital distraction is simply the price of living in the modern world. But this is propaganda designed to maintain their access to your attention. The truth is that with the right knowledge, strategies, and commitment, you can reclaim control of your focus and use technology as a tool rather than becoming a tool of technology. Chapter 4. The Deep Work Revolution. In a world where shallow work is becoming the norm, the ability to do deep work is becoming a superpower. Deep work is the ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks. It's the skill that allows you to quickly master complicated information and produce better results in less time. And in our increasingly competitive economy, deep work is becoming one of the most valuable abilities you can develop. Most people spend their entire careers in a state of shallow work. Tasks that are logistical in nature, often performed while distracted, and don't create much new value in the world. Email responses, status meetings, social media management, administrative tasks, and other reactive activities fill the majority of most people's work days. These activities feel like work, and they certainly keep you busy, but they don't move you toward your most important goals. Deep work, on the other hand, is the kind of effort that creates real value. It's what happens when a scientist makes a breakthrough discovery, when a writer produces a compelling piece of literature, when an entrepreneur develops an innovative business strategy, when an artist creates a masterpiece. Deep work is where meaningful contribution happens, where skills are developed, where competitive advantages are built. The ability to perform deep work is becoming increasingly rare and increasingly valuable. As more people become addicted to digital distraction and lose the capacity for sustained focus, those who maintain this ability gain an enormous competitive advantage. In many fields, the difference between those who thrive and those who struggle comes down to their capacity for sustained focused effort on cognitively demanding tasks. Consider the mathematics behind deep work's impact. If you can focus deeply for 4 hours per day, while your competitors can only manage 1 hour of focused work between distractions, you're not just 4 times more productive. Because deep work allows for compound learning and creative breakthroughs that don't happen in shallow work. Your advantage can be exponential rather than linear. But developing the ability to do deep work requires more than just deciding to focus better. It requires understanding the specific conditions that enable sustained focus and systematically creating those conditions in your life. It requires training your brain to tolerate sustained effort without seeking distraction. It requires developing metacognitive awareness of your own attention states and learning to regulate them effectively. The first requirement for deep work is extended periods of uninterrupted focus. Research shows that it takes approximately 20 minutes to fully settle into a state of deep concentration. If you're interrupted every 15 minutes, you never actually reach the mental state where your best thinking happens. Most people's work days are structured in a way that makes deep work impossible, filled with meetings, notifications, and other interruptions that fragment attention. Creating blocks of uninterrupted time requires aggressive protection of your schedule. This means batching shallow work into specific time periods rather than letting it scattered throughout your day. It means turning off notifications, closing email, and creating physical and digital barriers to interruption. It means saying no to requests that don't align with your most important work and designing your environment to support sustained focus rather than reactive responsiveness. The second requirement is clear intention about what you're trying to accomplish during deep work sessions. Vague goals like work on the project or make progress aren't sufficient to maintain focus when your brain starts seeking distraction. Deep work requires specific objectives that provide clear direction for your mental energy and concrete measures of progress that maintain motivation during challenging periods. Effective deep work sessions begin with clarifying exactly what you're trying to accomplish, why it matters, and how you'll know when you've succeeded. This mental preparation primes your brain for sustained effort and provides the psychological framework necessary to maintain focus when the work becomes difficult or when distractions beckon. The third requirement is tolerance for mental discomfort. Deep work often involves grappling with complex problems that don't have obvious solutions. Learning difficult concepts that stretch your intellectual capacity and persisting through periods where progress feels slow or non-existent. Your brain will naturally seek easier, more immediately rewarding activities. When faced with this kind of sustained challenge, building tolerance for mental discomfort is like building physical fitness. It requires gradually increasing the duration and intensity of your focused work sessions. Start with shorter periods that feel manageable and progressively extend them as your attention span develops. Each time you resist the urge to seek distraction and maintain focus on difficult work, you're strengthening the neural pathways that make future deep work easier. The fourth requirement is ritual and routine that signal to your brain that it's time for deep work. Elite performers in every field use specific routines to trigger focused mental states. Athletes have pre-game rituals. Musicians have practice routines and writers have writing rituals. These routines aren't superstition. They're psychological preparation that primes the brain for optimal performance. Your deep work ritual might include specific locations where you do focused work, particular times of day when you schedule demanding tasks, consistent preparation routines that help you settle into focus, or environmental cues that signal the beginning of deep work sessions. The key is consistency. Using the same cues repeatedly trains your brain to enter focused states more quickly and reliably. The fifth requirement is regular recovery that prevents mental fatigue and maintains peak cognitive performance. Deep work is mentally exhausting in the same way that intense physical exercise is physically exhausting. Attempting to sustain maximum focus for extended periods without adequate recovery leads to diminished performance and increased susceptibility to distraction. Effective recovery isn't passive rest or entertainment consumption. It's activities that restore mental energy while providing psychological detachment from work-related thoughts. Time in nature, physical exercise, meditation, engaging conversations with friends and family, and creative hobbies that don't involve screens can all serve as effective recovery activities. The transformation that occurs when you develop deep work capacity extends far beyond productivity improvements. Deep work changes how you think, how you learn, and how you approach challenges. It develops mental resilience, creative problem-solving abilities, and the confidence that comes from knowing you can tackle difficult problems through sustained effort. People who master deep work often report that it fundamentally changes their relationship with their own potential. They discover capabilities they didn't know they possessed and achieve goals they previously thought were beyond their reach. They develop the kind of expertise that makes them valuable in any economy and the creative capacity that allows them to contribute something meaningful to the world. Chapter 5. Environmental Design. Your environment is not neutral. Every aspect of your physical and digital surroundings is either supporting your ability to focus or undermining it. Most people dramatically underestimate how much their environment affects their cognitive performance, assuming that willpower and motivation should be sufficient to maintain focus regardless of circumstances. But this assumption ignores decades of research showing that environmental factors have enormous influence on attention, decision and mental performance. The most successful people don't rely on willpower to maintain focus. They design their environments to make focused work the natural easy choice and distracted behavior difficult or impossible. They understand that the structure of your surroundings shapes the structure of your thoughts, and they use this knowledge to create conditions that automatically support their goals. Environmental design for focus operates on multiple levels: physical space, digital environment, social context, and temporal structure. Each of these elements can either enhance or impair your ability to sustain attention. And optimizing all of them creates compound effects that make deep work feel effortless rather than exhausting. Physical space has profound effects on cognitive performance that most people never consider. The presence of clutter, for example, measurably impairs working memory and increases stress hormones. Visual distractions in your peripheral vision constantly pull small amounts of attention away from your primary task, creating cognitive load that accumulates throughout the day. Noise, lighting, temperature, and air quality all influence your brain's ability to sustain focus and perform complex mental tasks. Creating a physical environment optimized for focus begins with eliminating visual distractions. Clear surfaces, organized spaces, and minimal visual elements allow your brain to direct its full attention toward your work rather than processing irrelevant environmental information. This doesn't mean your space needs to be sterile or uncomfortable, but it does mean being intentional about what you allow in your field of vision during focused work. Lighting quality dramatically affects both cognitive performance and emotional state. Natural light, when available, provides the ideal conditions for sustained mental work. When natural light isn't sufficient, full-spectrum lighting that mimics natural daylight supports better focus than standard indoor lighting. Harsh fluorescent lighting, on the other hand, increases stress and mental fatigue. Temperature and air quality also play crucial roles in cognitive performance. Research shows that cognitive function begins to decline when room temperature rises above 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Poor air quality, particularly high carbon dioxide levels that occur in poorly ventilated spaces, significantly impairs decision-making and complex thinking. Investing in environmental controls that maintain optimal temperature and air quality pays dividends in improved mental performance. Noise management is particularly important for sustained focus. While some people claim they can work well with background noise, research consistently shows that complex cognitive tasks are impaired by auditory distractions. Even when people report being able to tune them out, the brain is constantly processing auditory information. And this processing uses mental resources that could otherwise be directed toward your primary task. The ideal auditory environment for deep work is complete silence. When silence isn't possible, consistent non-linguistic background noise like white noise or nature sounds can mask more distracting audio. Music with lyrics should generally be avoided during cognitively demanding work, as language processing interferes with tasks that involve language or complex thinking. Digital environment design is equally important and often more challenging because of the intentionally addictive nature of digital tools. The default settings on most devices and applications are optimized to capture and fragment your attention rather than support sustained focus. Taking control of your digital environment requires actively overriding these defaults and creating systems that serve your goals rather than the goals of technology companies. Notification management is the first and most important step in digital environment design. Every notification is an interruption that breaks your focus and requires mental energy to process and dismiss. The cumulative effect of multiple notifications throughout the day is a state of constant partial attention that makes deep work impossible. The solution is radical. Turn off all notifications except those that represent genuine emergencies requiring immediate response. This includes email notifications, social media alerts, news updates, shopping confirmations, and app notifications of all kinds. Most people resist this because they worry about missing something important. But the reality is that very few things in modern life actually require immediate attention. Creating separate digital environments for focused work and communication can further enhance your ability to concentrate. This might mean using different devices for different purposes, having separate user accounts with different applications and settings, or using website blockers and app restrictors during focused work sessions. Social environment has enormous influence on your ability to maintain focus and work deeply. The people around you, their energy levels, their respect for focused work time, and their own attention habits all affect your cognitive performance. Surrounding yourself with people who value deep work and understand the importance of sustained focus makes it much easier to maintain these practices yourself. If you work in an open office or other environment where you don't control the social context, you'll need to create boundaries that protect your focus time. This might involve using headphones to signal unavailability, scheduling focused work during times when fewer people are around, or finding alternative locations where deep work is more feasible. Temporal environment design involves structuring your time in ways that support sustained focus rather than fragmented attention. This includes identifying your natural energy cycles and scheduling demanding cognitive work during your peak performance periods. For most people, complex thinking is easier in the morning when mental energy is highest and decision fatigue hasn't yet accumulated. Creating consistent routines for beginning and ending focused work sessions helps train your brain to enter and exit deep work states more efficiently. These routines act as psychological switches that signal to your nervous system that it's time to shift into or out of focused mode. Protecting your temporal environment also means being selective about meetings, appointments, and other commitments that fragment your schedule. A calendar filled with meetings and interruptions makes deep work impossible. Regardless of how motivated you feel or how optimized your physical environment might be, the compound effect of optimizing all these environmental factors is that focused work begins to feel natural and effortless rather than forced and exhausting. When your environment is properly designed, your brain doesn't have to fight against distraction and temptation. Instead, the structure of your surroundings naturally guides your attention toward your most important work. This environmental approach to focus is particularly powerful because it doesn't require constant willpower or motivation. Once your environment is properly designed, it continues to support your focus automatically. Even on days when you feel tired, stressed, or unmotivated, the environment becomes a system that maintains your focus for you rather than depending on your mental energy to resist distraction. Chapter 6. The Discipline Matrix. Discipline isn't what you think it is. Most people believe discipline is about forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do through sheer willpower. But this understanding is not only wrong, it's counterproductive. True discipline is about creating systems that make the right choices automatic and the wrong choices difficult. The highest performers don't have more willpower than you. They've simply designed their lives so that focused work feels natural and distraction feels unnatural. They've built what I call the discipline matrix. A framework of habits, systems, and structures that eliminates the need for constant decision-making about whether to focus or get distracted. Willpower is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day. Every decision you make, every temptation you resist, every choice between focus and distraction draws from the same limited pool of mental energy. By the afternoon, most people have exhausted their willpower reserves and become highly susceptible to distraction and poor decision-making. The discipline matrix works by removing willpower from the equation entirely. Instead of relying on moment-to-moment decisions about whether to focus, you create predetermined structures that guide your behavior automatically. This might seem restrictive, but it's actually liberating because it frees your mental energy for creative and productive work rather than constant self-control battles. The first element of the discipline matrix is non-negotiable routines. These are specific sequences of actions that you perform consistently regardless of how you feel, what else is happening, or whether you're motivated. Morning routines, workout schedules, work start rituals, and evening wind-down procedures all serve as automatic triggers that put you into the right mental and physical state for sustained focus. Non-negotiable doesn't mean inflexible. It means that the routine happens every day, even if the specific timing or duration needs to be adjusted based on circumstances. The power comes from consistency, not perfection. When you perform the same sequence of actions repeatedly, your brain begins to anticipate what comes next and prepares accordingly. The second element is environmental constraints that make distraction physically difficult or impossible. This includes removing smartphones from your workspace, using website blockers during focused work time, creating physical barriers between yourself and potential distractions, and designing your space so that focused work is the path of least resistance. Environmental constraints work because they intercept impulses before they become conscious decisions. When you feel the urge to check social media, but your phone is in another room, the extra friction gives your rational mind to override the impulse. When distracting websites are blocked, you can't mindlessly navigate to them during moments of boredom or frustration. The third element is accountability systems that create external pressure to maintain focus. This might include working alongside someone else who's also doing focused work, reporting your daily deep work hours to a colleague or mentor, scheduling specific deliverables that require sustained effort, or joining groups of people committed to similar goals. Accountability works because it transforms focus from a personal preference into a social commitment. When other people are depending on your focused work or when you've publicly committed to specific goals, the cost of distraction increases dramatically. This external pressure supplements your internal motivation and helps maintain consistency during periods when your personal motivation is low. The fourth element is progressive challenge that gradually increases your capacity for sustained focus. Just as physical fitness improves through progressively more demanding exercise, focus fitness improves through progressively longer and more challenging periods of sustained attention. Starting with short focus sessions and gradually extending them builds mental stamina without creating overwhelming frustration. Progressive challenge also involves tackling increasingly complex cognitive tasks as your focus capacity develops. Beginning with easier work that requires less mental energy and gradually moving toward more demanding challenges ensures steady development without discouragement. Each successful session builds confidence and neural pathways that make future sessions easier. The fifth element is recovery protocols that restore mental energy and prevent burnout. Sustainable focus requires balancing periods of intense concentration with periods of genuine rest and renewal. This includes daily recovery practices like meditation or nature walks, weekly recovery through engaging in hobbies or social activities, and longer recovery periods through vacations or sabbaticals. Recovery isn't the absence of activity. It's engagement in activities that restore rather than deplete mental energy. Physical exercise, creative pursuits unrelated to work, spending time in nature, and deep social connections all serve as effective recovery that actually enhances subsequent focus capacity. The discipline matrix works because it addresses the psychological and neurological realities of sustained attention rather than relying on motivational myths about willpower and determination. When you build systems that support focus and remove systems that encourage distraction, focused work becomes your default mode rather than something you have to force yourself to do. Chapter 7. Advanced Focus Techniques. Elite performers in every field use specific techniques to achieve levels of focus that seem almost superhuman to outside observers. These aren't mystical practices or genetic advantages. They're trainable skills based on scientific understanding of how attention works and how to optimize cognitive performance. The first advanced technique is attentional cycling, which involves deliberately alternating between different types of focus to maintain peak performance for extended periods. Your brain has multiple attention systems that become fatigued at different rates. By systematically rotating between focused attention, open monitoring, and directed rest, you can maintain high-level cognitive performance for much longer than would be possible with continuous focused effort. Focused attention involves directing your mental energy toward a specific target while filtering out distractions. This is the type of focus most people think of when they think about concentration. Open monitoring involves maintaining awareness of your overall mental state without focusing on any particular object. Directed rest involves intentionally disengaging from goal-directed thinking while remaining alert and aware. A typical attentional cycling session might involve 50 minutes of focused attention on a specific task, followed by 10 minutes of open monitoring, where you observe your thoughts and mental state without trying to control them, followed by 5 minutes of directed rest, where you disengage from thinking entirely. This cycle can be repeated multiple times throughout the day to maintain optimal cognitive performance. The second advanced technique is metacognitive monitoring, which involves developing awareness of your own attention states and learning to regulate them in real time. Most people are only dimly aware of when their attention wanders, how long they've been distracted, or what triggers cause them to lose focus. Metacognitive monitoring involves training yourself to notice these patterns and intervene before distraction becomes entrenched. This involves regularly checking in with yourself during focused work sessions to assess the quality of your attention. Are you fully engaged with the task, or are you going through the motions while your mind wanders? Are you experiencing the mental clarity that comes with deep focus? Or do you feel scattered and reactive? How long has it been since you last felt fully present with your work? Developing metacognitive awareness allows you to catch attention wandering early and redirect it before significant time is lost. It also helps you identify the conditions that support your best focus and the factors that tend to undermine your concentration. This self-knowledge becomes the foundation for optimizing your personal focus system. The third advanced technique is cognitive load management, which involves strategically organizing your mental resources to maximize available attention for your most important work. Your brain has limited processing capacity, and every mental task you're simultaneously managing reduces the resources available for focused thinking. Cognitive load management begins with externalizing as much information as possible rather than trying to hold it in working memory. This includes writing down tasks, ideas, and reminders instead of trying to remember them. Using structured note-taking systems to capture and organize information and creating external systems for tracking projects, deadlines, and commitments. It also involves batching similar types of work to minimize the mental switching costs associated with changing between different types of tasks. Responding to all emails at once rather than throughout the day. Scheduling all meetings during specific time blocks rather than scattered throughout the schedule. And grouping creative work separately from administrative tasks. All reduce cognitive load and preserve mental energy for deep work. The fourth advanced technique is flow state cultivation, which involves creating the specific conditions that trigger the optimal experience of effortless concentration. Flow states occur when the challenge level of a task perfectly matches your skill level, when you have clear goals and immediate feedback, and when you're able to maintain complete absorption in the activity. Cultivating flow requires carefully calibrating the difficulty of your work to match your current capabilities. Tasks that are too easy become boring and fail to maintain attention. Tasks that are too difficult become overwhelming and create anxiety that interferes with focus. The optimal zone is just beyond your current comfort level, but not so far that success feels impossible. Flow cultivation also requires eliminating self-consciousness and internal distractions that interfere with complete absorption. This means creating conditions where you feel safe to make mistakes, where you're not worried about how others perceive your work, and where you can become completely absorbed in the process rather than focused on outcomes. The fifth advanced technique is attention restoration through specific practices that rebuild mental energy and enhance subsequent focus capacity. Not all rest is equally restorative. Passive entertainment consumption, social media browsing, and other forms of stimulating but low-effort activities often leave you feeling more mentally fatigued rather than refreshed. Truly restorative activities share certain characteristics. They involve gentle engagement without intense effort. They provide psychological distance from work-related concerns. They often involve natural environments or natural movements, and they engage different mental systems than those used during focused work. Walking in nature, engaging in creative hobbies, having meaningful conversations with friends, practicing meditation, and engaging in physical exercise all serve as effective attention restoration practices. The key is choosing activities that feel genuinely refreshing rather than just filling time. The integration of these advanced techniques creates compound effects that dramatically enhance your overall focus capacity. Each technique supports and amplifies the others, creating a comprehensive system for maintaining peak cognitive performance throughout extended periods of demanding work. Chapter 8. Defeating internal enemies. The greatest obstacles to sustained focus aren't external distractions. They're the internal enemies that arise from within your own mind. Anxiety, self-doubt, overthinking, perfectionism, and mental restlessness. These internal enemies are often more disruptive than any external distraction because they can't be eliminated by changing your environment or turning off notifications. Anxiety is perhaps the most common internal enemy of focus. When you're anxious about deadlines, outcomes, or potential failures, your brain's threat detection system becomes hyperactive and constantly scans for problems, rather than focusing on the task at hand. This anxious vigilance makes sustained concentration nearly impossible because your attention is continually pulled toward worry rather than work. The key to managing anxiety-driven distraction is understanding that anxiety is not a signal to stop working. It's a signal that your nervous system perceives some kind of threat, real or imagined. By learning to work with anxiety rather than being controlled by it, you can maintain focus even when you feel nervous or worried about outcomes. Anxiety management for focus begins with distinguishing between productive concern and unproductive worry. Productive concern motivates appropriate action and preparation. Unproductive worry involves repetitive thoughts about potential problems without any constructive planning or action. Learning to recognize the difference allows you to address legitimate concerns while dismissing pointless rumination. When anxiety arises during focused work, the most effective response is acknowledgement without engagement. Notice the anxious thoughts without trying to solve them immediately or push them away forcefully. Acknowledge that your brain is trying to protect you by identifying potential problems. Thank it for the warning and then return your attention to your current task. Self-doubt is another major internal enemy that undermines focus by creating internal commentary about your capabilities, the quality of your work, and whether your efforts are worthwhile. This internal critic constantly evaluates your performance and finds it lacking, creating a steady stream of negative thoughts that compete with task-focused attention. The internal critic often becomes more active during challenging work because difficult tasks naturally involve uncertainty, mistakes, and periods where progress feels slow. Your brain interprets this difficulty as evidence that you're not capable of success, which triggers self-protective mechanisms that encourage you to quit before experiencing failure. Managing self-doubt requires recognizing that internal criticism is not objective assessment. It's often a manifestation of fear disguised as rational evaluation, the voice that tells you you're not smart enough, talented enough, or qualified enough, is usually trying to protect you from potential disappointment by encouraging you to avoid challenges. The most effective response to self-doubt is to treat it as background noise rather than important information. When self-critical thoughts arise, acknowledge them briefly and then return your attention to the work itself. Focus on the process rather than your performance, on learning rather than proving yourself, and on progress rather than perfection. Overthinking is the tendency to analyze and reanalyze decisions, possibilities, and problems far beyond what's necessary or helpful. While careful thinking is valuable, overthinking becomes a form of mental procrastination that substitutes thinking about work for actually doing work. It creates the illusion of productivity while actually preventing progress. Overthinking often stems from perfectionism and the desire to find the one right answer before taking action. But most complex work requires iterative progress rather than perfect planning. The best solutions emerge through doing, testing, and refining rather than through exhaustive analysis. Breaking the overthinking pattern requires setting specific limits on planning and analysis time. Give yourself a predetermined amount of time to think through a problem or decision and then commit to taking action based on your best current understanding. Accept that initial attempts won't be perfect and that refinement happens through iteration rather than upfront perfection. Mental restlessness is the feeling that you should be doing something else, checking something, or moving to a different task. This restlessness often arises when work becomes challenging or when progress feels slow. Your brain seeks easier, more immediately rewarding activities to avoid the discomfort of sustained effort on difficult tasks. Restlessness is often a sign that you're approaching the edge of your comfort zone, which is exactly where growth and breakthrough happen. Learning to tolerate and work through restlessness rather than immediately seeking relief through distraction is crucial for developing the capacity for sustained focus. When restlessness arises, the most effective response is to pause and recommit to your current task rather than immediately seeking stimulation or switching activities. Take a few deep breaths. Remind yourself why the current work is important and then return your attention to the task with renewed intention. The final internal enemy is the narrative voice that constantly comments on your experience, evaluates your performance, and creates stories about what everything means. This internal narrator can become so active that you spend more time thinking about your work than actually doing it. The narrative voice often becomes particularly active during challenging work because uncertainty and difficulty trigger your brain's meaning-making systems. When you don't immediately understand something or when progress feels slow, your mind creates stories to explain what's happening. And these stories often interfere with direct engagement with the task. Managing the internal narrator requires developing the ability to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them. When you notice your mind creating stories about your work, your capabilities, or what outcomes mean, acknowledge the storytelling activity, and then return your attention to direct experience of the task itself. The common thread in managing all internal enemies is developing a different relationship with your thoughts and emotions rather than trying to eliminate them entirely. You can't prevent anxiety, self-doubt, overthinking, restlessness, or internal commentary from arising, but you can learn to work effectively despite their presence. Chapter 9. The Focus Lifestyle. Developing exceptional focus isn't just about what you do during work sessions. It's about designing your entire lifestyle to support sustained attention and cognitive performance. The choices you make about sleep, nutrition, exercise, relationships, and leisure activities all significantly impact your ability to concentrate and think clearly. Sleep is the foundation of cognitive performance. Yet most people dramatically underestimate its importance for focus and attention. Your brain uses sleep to consolidate memories, clear metabolic waste, and restore the neurotransmitter systems that enable sustained concentration. Even modest sleep deprivation significantly impairs attention, working memory, and decision-making capacity. The relationship between sleep and focus is not just about total sleep duration. Sleep quality, timing, and consistency all affect cognitive performance. Irregular sleep schedules disrupt your circadian rhythms and make it much harder to achieve peak mental performance during your intended work hours. Poor sleep quality, even with adequate duration, leaves you feeling mentally foggy and prone to distraction. Optimizing sleep for focus requires treating sleep as seriously as you treat any other aspect of performance enhancement. This means maintaining consistent sleep and wake times, creating environmental conditions that support deep sleep, avoiding stimulants and screens before bedtime, and ensuring adequate sleep duration for your individual needs. Most adults require 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night for optimal cognitive performance, but individual needs vary. The key is to experiment with different sleep durations and pay attention to how different amounts of sleep affect your ability to focus the following day. Quality sleep should leave you feeling alert and mentally clear without requiring caffeine or other stimulants. Nutrition has profound effects on cognitive performance that most people never consider. Your brain consumes approximately 20% of your total energy, and the type of fuel you provide significantly affects its performance. Blood sugar fluctuations, dehydration, and nutrient deficiencies all impair attention and make sustained focus much more difficult. The standard modern diet of processed foods, refined sugars, and irregular meal timing creates blood sugar roller coasters that directly undermine cognitive performance. When blood sugar spikes and crashes throughout the day, your brain experiences corresponding fluctuations in energy availability that make sustained attention nearly impossible. Optimizing nutrition for focus involves eating in ways that maintain stable blood sugar levels throughout the day. This typically means emphasizing whole foods over processed foods, including adequate protein and healthy fats with each meal, avoiding refined sugars and simple carbohydrates that cause blood sugar spikes, and eating at regular intervals to maintain steady energy. Hydration is particularly important for cognitive performance because even mild dehydration significantly impairs attention and working memory. Most people are chronically underhydrated without realizing it, and this chronic dehydration contributes to mental fatigue and difficulty concentrating. Physical exercise is one of the most powerful tools for enhancing cognitive performance. Yet most people think of exercise and mental work as competing priorities rather than complementary activities. Regular exercise increases blood flow to the brain, promotes the growth of new neural connections, and releases neurotransmitters that enhance mood and attention. The cognitive benefits of exercise aren't just long-term adaptations. A single bout of moderate exercise can improve cognitive performance for several hours afterward. This means that strategic exercise timing can be used to enhance focus during important work sessions. The type of exercise matters less than consistency and intensity. Both cardiovascular exercise and strength training provide cognitive benefits, and even moderate activities like walking can enhance mental performance. The key is finding forms of exercise that you enjoy and can maintain consistently rather than pursuing perfect optimization. Social relationships and community connections significantly impact your ability to maintain focus and sustain demanding mental work. Humans are social beings, and isolation or relationship stress creates cognitive load that interferes with concentration. Conversely, Supportive relationships and community connections provide emotional resources that enhance resilience and cognitive performance. This doesn't mean you need to be constantly socializing. But it does mean that nurturing meaningful relationships and having adequate social support are important components of a focus-optimized lifestyle. Time spent in genuine connection with others isn't time taken away from productive work. It's an investment that enhances your capacity for productive work. Leisure activities and hobbies also play crucial roles in maintaining cognitive performance over time. Your brain needs periods of genuine rest and engagement in activities that are personally meaningful but not work-related. However, not all leisure activities are equally restorative. Passive entertainment consumption often leaves you feeling more mentally fatigued rather than refreshed. The most restorative leisure activities share certain characteristics. They engage your attention without requiring intense effort. They provide psychological distance from work concerns. They often involve physical movement or creative expression. And they connect you with aspects of life that feel personally meaningful. Engaging in creative hobbies, spending time in nature, practicing contemplative activities like meditation or prayer, participating in community activities, and pursuing learning that's unrelated to work all serve as effective cognitive restoration that enhances subsequent focus capacity. The key insight is that exceptional focus isn't achieved through willpower and discipline alone. It emerges from designing your entire life to support cognitive performance. When your sleep, nutrition, exercise, relationships, and leisure activities all align to support mental clarity and sustained attention, focused work becomes natural and effortless rather than forced and exhausting. This lifestyle approach to focus development also provides sustainability that purely technique-based approaches lack. You can use advanced focus techniques to temporarily enhance your concentration. But lasting transformation requires building a life that naturally supports the mental states you're trying to cultivate. Chapter 10. Mastery Level. Mastery level focus isn't just the ability to concentrate for extended periods. It's the capacity to direct your attention with such precision and stability that you can achieve states of consciousness where the boundary between yourself and your work dissolves entirely. At this level, focus becomes effortless. Creative insights emerge spontaneously and you consistently perform at the absolute peak of your capabilities. Most people never reach this level because they mistake intensity for mastery. They believe that working harder, trying to concentrate more forcefully or extending focus sessions through sheer willpower represents advanced practice. But mastery-level focus is characterized by ease rather than effort, by flow rather than force, by sustainable high performance rather than exhausting peak experiences. The transition to mastery begins when you stop fighting against distraction and start dancing with attention. Instead of trying to eliminate all mental movement, you learn to work with the natural rhythms of your mind. You develop the capacity to notice when attention wanders without judgment, to gently guide it back to your chosen target without force, and to maintain awareness of your overall mental state while remaining absorbed in specific tasks. This metacognitive awareness is perhaps the most important characteristic of mastery-level focus. You develop the ability to simultaneously engage deeply with your work while maintaining awareness of the quality of your engagement. You can sense when your attention is sharp and clear versus when it's becoming dull or scattered. You notice early warning signs of mental fatigue before they significantly impact your performance. At the mastery level, you also develop exquisite sensitivity to the conditions that support your optimal performance. You can accurately assess whether you have the mental energy for demanding cognitive work or whether you need recovery. You can sense when your environment is conducive to deep work versus when it's likely to undermine your concentration. You can predict how different activities, foods, or sleep patterns will affect your subsequent focus capacity. This sensitivity allows you to make micro-adjustments throughout the day that maintain peak cognitive performance for extended periods. Instead of pushing through suboptimal conditions or accepting decreased performance as inevitable, you continuously optimize your internal and external environment to support your best thinking. Mastery-level focus also involves developing what contemplative traditions call one-pointed concentration. The ability to sustain unwavering attention on a chosen target for extended periods without effort or strain. This isn't the tense, forced concentration that most people associate with focus. It's a relaxed, stable awareness that can be maintained indefinitely without creating fatigue or mental tension. Developing one-pointed concentration requires understanding that attention has natural depth levels, from surface awareness that skims across objects to profound absorption that penetrates to the core of whatever you're examining. Most people operate primarily at surface levels, which is why their attention feels unstable and prone to wandering. Training deeper levels of attention creates the stability and clarity that characterize mastery-level focus. This training happens through progressive refinement of your attention across thousands of practice sessions. Each time you notice that your mind has wandered and gently return it to your chosen target, you're strengthening the neural networks responsible for sustained attention. Each time you resist the impulse to seek distraction and maintain engagement with challenging work, you're building the mental fitness that makes future focus easier. But perhaps the most remarkable characteristic of mastery-level focus is the emergence of what psychologists call flow states. Periods of effortless concentration where self-consciousness disappears. Time perception alters and you perform at levels that surprise even yourself. These states can't be forced or manufactured, but they arise naturally when specific conditions are met. Flow states emerge when the challenge level of your work perfectly matches your skill level. When you have clear goals and immediate feedback about your progress. When you feel completely safe to experiment and make mistakes, and when you can become totally absorbed in the process rather than worried about outcomes. Creating these conditions consistently is one of the hallmarks of mastery-level practice. At the mastery level, you also develop the capacity for what contemplatives call choiceless awareness. The ability to remain fully present and alert without needing to direct your attention toward any particular object. This is the mental state that allows for breakthrough insights, creative solutions, and intuitive understanding that goes beyond logical analysis. Choiceless awareness emerges from the same training that develops focused attention, but it represents a more advanced application of attention skills. Instead of concentrating on specific targets, you learn to maintain open, spacious awareness that can simultaneously hold multiple elements of experience without becoming scattered or overwhelmed. This capacity for open awareness is particularly valuable for creative work, problem solving, and strategic thinking that requires seeing connections and patterns that aren't immediately obvious. It's also essential for leadership, communication, and collaborative work that requires sensitivity to complex social and emotional dynamics. The ultimate goal of focus mastery isn't just enhanced productivity or cognitive performance. It's the development of mental qualities that enhance every aspect of your life. The same attention skills that allow you to work deeply also allow you to listen deeply, to love deeply, to experience life deeply. Focus mastery is ultimately about developing the capacity for profound engagement with whatever you choose to direct your attention toward. This level of mastery doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen through weekend workshops or quick-fix techniques. It's the result of years of consistent practice, continuous refinement, and patient development of increasingly subtle attention skills. But the journey itself is rewarding, and the benefits begin to emerge long before you reach the highest levels of mastery. The key insight is that focus mastery is not a destination but a continuous process of deepening your capacity for sustained skillful attention. There's always another level of refinement possible, always new subtleties to discover, always deeper states of concentration and awareness to explore. This recognition keeps the practice fresh and prevents the complacency that stops progress at intermediate levels. Chapter 11. The Concentration Zone. There's a secret that elite performers in every field understand but rarely discuss openly. The ability to enter what I call the concentration zone on command. This isn't just about focusing harder or trying to eliminate distractions. It's about accessing a specific neurological state where your brain operates at peak efficiency, where complex problems become clear, and where hours of work feel like minutes. The concentration zone is a measurable brain state characterized by specific patterns of neural activity. When neuroscientists study the brains of people performing at their absolute best, they consistently find the same signature. High-frequency gamma waves in the prefrontal cortex, synchronized neural oscillations across different brain regions, and decreased activity in the default mode network that's responsible for mind-wandering and self-referential thinking. Most people experience the concentration zone accidentally and sporadically. They'll have occasional periods where everything clicks, where they're completely absorbed in their work and where they produce their best results with surprising ease, but they can't reliably access this state because they don't understand the specific conditions that trigger it or the techniques that sustain it. The first requirement for entering the concentration zone is optimal arousal. Your nervous system needs to be activated enough to maintain alertness and engagement, but not so activated that you become anxious or scattered. This optimal arousal level varies between individuals and even varies for the same person depending on the time of day, their current stress levels, and the type of work they're attempting. Learning to calibrate your arousal level requires developing sensitivity to your internal state and learning specific techniques for increasing or decreasing activation as needed. If you're feeling sluggish or unmotivated, you might need to increase arousal through physical movement, cold exposure, or energizing breathing techniques. If you're feeling anxious or scattered, you might need to decrease arousal through relaxation practices, gentle movement, or calming breathing patterns. The second requirement is clear intention setting that primes your brain for the specific type of work you're about to undertake. Your brain performs differently depending on whether you're trying to solve analytical problems, engage in creative thinking, learn new information, or execute routine tasks. Setting clear intentions before beginning work helps your nervous system configure itself for optimal performance on your chosen task. Intention setting isn't just about deciding what you want to accomplish. It's about mentally rehearsing the type of thinking you'll need to engage in, visualizing yourself successfully, completing the work, and creating a clear mental image of what success looks like. This mental preparation activates the neural networks you'll need and suppresses competing mental processes that might interfere with your performance. The third requirement is elimination of cognitive interference through specific preparation rituals that clear your mental space of distracting thoughts, worries, and competing priorities. Your brain has limited processing capacity, and any mental energy devoted to unrelated concerns reduces the resources available for deep work. Effective preparation rituals might include writing down any distracting thoughts or worries to get them out of your head, reviewing your goals and priorities to reinforce what's most important, clearing your physical workspace of clutter and distractions, and taking a few minutes to transition mentally from whatever you were doing previously to the work you're about to begin. The fourth requirement is entering through progressive deepening rather than attempting to immediately achieve maximum concentration. The concentration zone is a deep brain state that takes time to access. Trying to force immediate peak focus often creates tension and anxiety that actually prevents you from reaching the deeper states of concentration you're seeking. Progressive deepening involves starting with easier aspects of your work and gradually moving toward more challenging elements as your concentration stabilizes. You might begin by organizing your materials, reviewing previous work, or tackling routine aspects of your project before moving into the most demanding creative or analytical components. The fifth requirement is maintaining the zone through micro adjustments that keep you in the optimal state without breaking your concentration. Once you've accessed the concentration zone, small disturbances can knock you out of it. But you can learn to make subtle corrections that maintain the state even when minor disruptions occur. This might involve adjusting your posture when you notice physical tension building, taking a few conscious breaths when you sense your attention beginning to scatter, or briefly refocusing on your intentions when you notice your motivation starting to wane. These micro-adjustments become automatic with practice and allow you to maintain peak states for extended periods. The concentration zone is also characterized by a specific relationship with time where hours feel like minutes and you lose track of external schedules and commitments. This time distortion occurs because your prefrontal cortex, which normally monitors time and maintains awareness of external obligations, becomes completely absorbed in your current task. While this time distortion is generally positive because it indicates deep engagement, it can create practical problems if you have fixed commitments or deadlines. Learning to maintain awareness of time while in the concentration zone requires practice and usually involves setting gentle reminders that don't completely break your focus, but do provide periodic time checks. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the concentration zone is that it becomes more accessible the more you practice entering it. Each successful session strengthens the neural pathways involved and makes future access easier and more reliable. Over time, you develop the ability to enter deep concentration states within minutes rather than needing extensive preparation or waiting for optimal conditions. The key insight is that the concentration zone isn't a mysterious or mystical state. It's a specific configuration of brain activity that can be understood, practiced, and developed systematically. With proper training and consistent practice, anyone can learn to access these states reliably and use them to dramatically enhance their cognitive performance and creative output. Chapter 12. Energy Management. Focus isn't just about attention control. It's about energy management. Your ability to sustain concentration depends entirely on your capacity to generate, preserve, and strategically deploy mental energy throughout the day. Most people approach focus as if it were simply a matter of willpower or technique. But they ignore the fundamental reality that sustained attention requires substantial mental energy. Mental energy operates according to predictable patterns that most people never learn to recognize or optimize. You have natural rhythms of cognitive performance that fluctuate throughout the day based on circadian biology, sleep cycles, nutrition, and accumulated mental fatigue. Understanding these patterns allows you to schedule demanding work during peak energy periods and avoid wasting your limited mental resources on low-value activities. For most people, mental energy is highest in the morning, particularly in the first few hours after waking. This is when your prefrontal cortex is most active, your decision-making capacity is strongest, and your ability to resist distractions is at its peak. Yet most people squander this precious time on email, social media, news consumption, and other reactive activities that provide no meaningful return on their mental energy investment. Protecting your peak energy hours for your most important work is one of the highest leverage changes you can make to improve your focus and productivity. This means identifying the 2-4-hour window when you feel most mentally sharp and reserving that time exclusively for work that requires sustained concentration, creative thinking, or complex problem solving. Mental energy also depletes in predictable ways throughout the day. Every decision you make, every temptation you resist, every task you switch between consumes mental energy from the same limited pool. This is why people often experience decision fatigue in the afternoon and why maintaining focus becomes progressively more difficult as the day continues. Understanding energy depletion patterns allows you to make strategic choices about how to spend your mental resources. Instead of making hundreds of small decisions throughout the day about what to work on, what to eat, what to wear, or how to respond to requests, you can create systems and routines that automate these decisions and preserve mental energy for work that actually matters. Energy management also involves recognizing the difference between tasks that consume mental energy and activities that restore it. Not all work is equally demanding and not all rest is equally restorative. Some activities leave you feeling energized and mentally clear while others leave you feeling drained and scattered. Energizing activities typically involve moderate challenge without overwhelming stress, engagement with meaningful goals, social connection, physical movement, exposure to nature, and periods of quiet reflection. Draining activities typically involve repetitive stress, conflict, multitasking, exposure to negativity, passive entertainment consumption, and environments that require constant vigilance against distractions. Strategic energy management means structuring your day to maximize energizing activities and minimize draining ones. This doesn't mean avoiding all challenging or stressful work, but it does mean being selective about which challenges you take on and ensuring that you have adequate recovery between demanding activities. Physical energy and mental energy are closely interconnected. Your brain consumes approximately 20% of your total energy. And anything that affects your physical energy also affects your cognitive performance. Poor nutrition, dehydration, lack of sleep, and sedentary behavior all directly impair your ability to sustain attention and think clearly. Optimizing physical energy for mental performance involves treating your body like the high-performance machine it is. This means eating foods that provide stable energy rather than blood sugar spikes and crashes. Staying adequately hydrated throughout the day, getting sufficient sleep to allow for neural recovery, and engaging in regular physical activity that enhances blood flow to the brain. Temperature regulation also significantly affects mental energy and cognitive performance. Your brain functions optimally within a narrow temperature range. And being too hot or too cold forces your nervous system to devote energy to temperature regulation rather than cognitive processing. Creating environments with optimal temperature control preserves mental energy for focused work. Perhaps the most important aspect of energy management is learning to work with your natural rhythms rather than against them. Some people are naturally more alert and focused in the morning, while others reach peak performance in the afternoon or evening. Some people can sustain focus for several hours at a time, while others perform better with shorter work sessions and more frequent breaks. Discovering your personal energy patterns requires paying attention to how you feel and perform at different times of day, after different types of activities, and under different environmental conditions. This self-knowledge becomes the foundation for designing a schedule and work structure that maximizes your natural strengths rather than fighting against your biology. Energy management also involves developing what psychologists call recovery capital, a reserve of mental and physical resources that you can draw upon during particularly demanding periods. Building recovery capital requires investing time in activities that restore and strengthen your overall resilience. Regular exercise, adequate sleep, meaningful relationships, engaging hobbies, and periods of genuine rest. The key insight is that sustainable high performance isn't about pushing yourself harder or working longer hours. It's about optimizing the relationship between energy expenditure and energy recovery so that you can maintain peak cognitive performance over extended periods without burning out or depleting your mental resources. Chapter 13. The Power of Single Tasking. In a world obsessed with multitasking, the ability to focus on one thing at a time has become a superpower. While everyone else is frantically switching between tasks, responding to notifications, and trying to do multiple things simultaneously, single taskers are producing higher quality work in less time with significantly less stress and mental fatigue. The myth of multitasking is one of the most destructive productivity beliefs of the modern era. Your brain cannot actually focus on multiple tasks simultaneously. What people call multitasking is actually rapid task switching. And this switching comes with enormous hidden costs that most people never recognize. Every time you switch from one task to another, your brain requires time to disengage from the first task, reorient to the second task, and rebuild the mental context necessary for effective performance. This switching cost isn't just a few seconds of lost time. Research shows that it can take up to 25 minutes to fully recover your focus after switching tasks. And this recovery time increases with the complexity of the tasks involved. The cognitive costs of task switching accumulate throughout the day. If you're switching tasks every few minutes, you never actually reach a state of deep engagement with any single activity. You spend your entire day in a state of continuous partial attention where you're always somewhat focused but never fully absorbed in meaningful work. But the costs go beyond just efficiency. Chronic multitasking actually changes your brain in ways that make sustained focus more difficult. People who frequently switch between tasks show decreased density in the anterior cingulate cortex, the brain region responsible for attention control. They also show increased activity in the striatum, a brain region associated with addictive behaviors and impulsive responses. Single tasking, on the other hand, allows you to access deeper levels of cognitive processing that are impossible when your attention is fragmented. When you focus exclusively on one task for extended periods, you can engage in what psychologists call deep processing. The kind of thinking that leads to insight, creativity, and breakthrough solutions to complex problems. The power of single tasking becomes apparent when you consider how much work actually gets accomplished during periods of undivided attention. A single hour of focused work on one task often produces more valuable output than an entire day of scattered multitasking effort. The quality difference is even more dramatic, as deep work typically results in better solutions, fewer errors, and more creative approaches. Developing single tasking ability requires retraining your brain to tolerate sustained engagement with individual activities. Most people have become addicted to the constant stimulation and variety that comes with task switching. Learning to find satisfaction in sustained effort on single tasks requires patience and gradual adaptation. Start by committing to work on one task for progressively longer periods. Begin with 15-20 minute sessions of single task focus and gradually extend these sessions as your tolerance for sustained attention improves. During these sessions, resist all urges to check email, respond to notifications, or switch to other activities. The key to successful single tasking is making switching physically difficult rather than relying on willpower to resist temptation. Close all applications except the one you're using for your current task. Turn off notifications on all devices. Put your phone in another room or in airplane mode. Create physical and digital barriers that require conscious effort to overcome if you want to switch tasks. Single tasking also requires clear boundaries around your work sessions. Before beginning a single task session, clearly define what you're going to work on, how long you plan to work, and what constitutes completion of the session. This clarity prevents the mental wandering that often leads to task switching and helps you maintain engagement when the work becomes challenging. Perhaps the most important aspect of single tasking is learning to work through the discomfort that arises when you resist the urge to switch tasks. Your brain will generate powerful impulses to check email, browse the internet, or engage in other stimulating activities when faced with challenging or tedious work. Learning to acknowledge these impulses without acting on them is crucial for developing sustained focus capacity. The benefits of single tasking extend beyond just work productivity. When you develop the ability to focus completely on one activity at a time, you also enhance your capacity for presence in relationships, enjoyment of leisure activities, and satisfaction with life experiences. Single tasking is ultimately about developing the ability to be fully where you are rather than constantly wishing you were somewhere else. The transformation that occurs when you commit to single tasking is often dramatic and rapid. Many people report significant improvements in their work quality and personal satisfaction within just a few weeks of adopting single task practices. The sense of accomplishment that comes from completing meaningful work through sustained effort is far more satisfying than the scattered busyness that characterizes most people's approach to productivity. The challenge is maintaining single tasking practices in environments that encourage and reward multitasking behaviors. This requires developing personal systems and boundaries that protect your single task sessions from external interruptions and internal impulses to switch activities. Chapter 14. Focus in the Digital Age. The digital revolution has fundamentally changed the landscape of human attention. We now live in an environment where sophisticated technologies compete for our focus. Using techniques borrowed from behavioral psychology, neuroscience, and addiction research. Mastering focus in the digital age requires understanding these new challenges and developing specific strategies for maintaining deep concentration in a world designed to scatter your attention. The average knowledge worker checks email every 6 minutes, switches between applications over 300 times per day, and is interrupted by notifications every 11 minutes. This creates a state of continuous partial attention where you're always somewhat engaged but never fully absorbed in meaningful work. The cumulative effect is a dramatic reduction in cognitive performance and creative output. But the challenge isn't just the frequency of digital interruptions. It's the way digital technologies are specifically designed to capture and hold your attention using variable reward schedules, social validation mechanisms, and fear of missing out triggers. Every app, website, and platform employs teams of specialists whose job is to make their product as engaging and difficult to resist as possible. Understanding the psychology behind digital persuasion is crucial for developing effective countermeasures. Social media platforms use variable reinforcement schedules that make checking for updates more addictive than any consistent reward system. Email systems create artificial urgency through notification badges and preview messages that trigger anxiety about potentially missed opportunities. Video platforms employ autoplay features and recommendation algorithms that make stopping feel unnatural and continuing feel inevitable. News websites exploit your brain's negativity bias by emphasizing threatening or emotionally provocative content that triggers stress responses and compulsive checking behaviors. The first step in reclaiming focus in the digital age is conducting a digital attention audit for 1 week. Track how often you check various devices and applications, how long you spend on different digital activities, and how these activities make you feel afterward. Most people are shocked to discover how much time they spend on low-value digital activities and how scattered their attention has become. Once you understand your current digital patterns, you can begin implementing strategic interventions. The most effective approach involves creating friction for distracting digital behaviors while removing friction for activities that support your goals. This might mean removing social media apps from your phone while installing apps that support learning or productivity. Notification management is perhaps the most important digital focus skill. Every notification is an interruption that breaks your concentration and requires mental energy to process and dismiss. The solution is radical. Turn off all notifications except those that represent genuine emergencies requiring immediate response. This includes email notifications, social media alerts, news updates, shopping confirmations, and app notifications of all kinds. Most people resist this because they worry about missing something important. But the reality is that very few things in modern life actually require immediate attention. Creating separate digital environments for different types of work can dramatically improve your ability to maintain focus. This might involve using different devices for different purposes, having separate user accounts with different applications installed, or using website blockers and app restrictors during focused work sessions. The goal is to make your digital environment support your intentions rather than undermine them. When you sit down to do focused work, your digital environment should contain only the tools necessary for that specific task and none of the distractions that might pull your attention away. Timeboxing digital activities is another crucial strategy for maintaining focus in the digital age. Instead of allowing digital communication and entertainment to be scattered throughout your day, designate specific times for checking email, browsing social media, consuming news, and other digital activities. This approach allows you to engage with digital tools when it's appropriate while protecting extended periods for deep focused work. It also helps break the unconscious habit of reaching for devices whenever you feel bored, frustrated, or uncertain about what to do next. Perhaps the most important skill for digital age focus is developing the ability to work offline. Many forms of deep work are actually enhanced by disconnecting entirely from the internet and digital communication. Writing, analysis, creative work, and strategic thinking often benefit from periods of complete digital isolation. Regular digital detoxes, where you completely disconnect from all digital devices for extended periods, help restore your brain's capacity for sustained attention and reduce the anxiety that comes from constant connectivity. These don't have to be extreme or lengthy. Even a few hours of complete disconnection can provide significant mental restoration. The key insight is that technology should serve your goals rather than determining them. When you take conscious control of your digital environment and usage patterns, technology becomes an incredibly powerful tool for learning, creating, and connecting with others. But when you allow technology companies to determine how you spend your attention, you become a product being optimized for someone else's benefit. Mastering focus in the digital age ultimately requires recognizing that your attention is your most valuable resource and making conscious choices about how to protect and deploy it. This means being selective about which digital tools you use, when you use them, and how you configure them to support rather than undermine your most important goals. Chapter 15. The Transformation. Everything changes when you master your focus. Not just your productivity or your work results, but your entire experience of life. The person who can sustain deep concentration for hours has access to levels of satisfaction, creativity, and achievement that remain forever inaccessible to those who live in a state of constant distraction. This transformation begins in your work life but extends far beyond professional accomplishments. When you develop the ability to focus deeply, you discover capabilities you never knew you possessed. Complex problems that once seemed overwhelming become manageable challenges. Creative projects that you previously abandoned in frustration become sources of deep satisfaction. Goals that seemed impossibly ambitious become achievable through sustained focused effort. The confidence that comes from completing meaningful work through sustained attention creates a positive spiral that affects every area of your life. You begin to trust your ability to tackle difficult challenges, to learn new skills, to persist through setbacks, and to achieve outcomes that require extended effort. This self-efficacy becomes the foundation for taking on increasingly ambitious projects and pursuing increasingly meaningful goals. But perhaps the most profound transformation occurs in your relationship with time itself. When you can focus deeply, time becomes abundant rather than scarce. A few hours of concentrated work often accomplish more than entire days of scattered effort. This efficiency creates genuine free time for relationships, hobbies, rest, and other activities that contribute to a rich and meaningful life. The quality of your relationships also improves dramatically when you develop focus mastery. The same attention skills that allow you to concentrate on work for hours also allow you to be fully present with the people you care about. You become capable of listening deeply, engaging authentically, and connecting meaningfully instead of being constantly distracted by devices or preoccupied with other concerns. This presence in relationships creates deeper bonds, more satisfying interactions, and a greater sense of connection with others. People notice when you're fully present with them and they respond by becoming more present themselves. The quality of your conversations improves. Conflicts are resolved more effectively and your relationships become sources of energy rather than drains on your attention. Your emotional regulation also transforms when you master focus. The same metacognitive awareness that allows you to notice when your attention wanders also allows you to observe your emotional states without being overwhelmed by them. You develop the capacity to respond to challenges rather than simply reacting to them. This emotional stability creates resilience that allows you to maintain focus even during stressful periods. Instead of being constantly buffeted by emotional ups and downs, you develop an inner steadiness that provides a foundation for sustained effort regardless of external circumstances. The learning acceleration that comes with focus mastery opens up possibilities that seemed impossible when your attention was scattered. Complex skills that once took years to develop can be mastered in months when you can sustain deliberate practice for extended periods. New fields of knowledge become accessible because you can engage with difficult material without becoming frustrated or giving up prematurely. This enhanced learning capacity creates opportunities for career advancement, creative expression, and personal growth that multiply throughout your life. Each new skill you master through focused effort makes subsequent learning easier and more efficient. You develop what psychologists call a growth mindset that sees challenges as opportunities rather than threats. Perhaps most importantly, focus mastery allows you to live according to your deepest values rather than simply reacting to external pressures and immediate impulses. When you can sustain attention on what truly matters to you, you gain the capacity to build a life that reflects your authentic priorities rather than the priorities imposed by society, technology, or other people's expectations. This alignment between your actions and your values creates a sense of integrity and purpose that provides lasting satisfaction regardless of external circumstances. You're no longer constantly wondering whether you're wasting your life or failing to reach your potential. You know that you're investing your time and energy in activities that genuinely matter to you. The ripple effects of your transformation extend beyond your immediate circle. When you model deep engagement, authentic presence, and sustained effort, you inspire others to develop these qualities themselves. Your example demonstrates that it's possible to live differently in a world of constant distraction. And others begin to seek similar transformation in their own lives. But perhaps the most profound realization that comes with focus mastery is that the journey itself is the destination. The process of developing sustained attention is inherently rewarding and meaningful. Each moment of deep engagement with challenging work, each experience of complete presence with loved ones, each period of absorbed creativity becomes valuable in itself rather than just a means to some future goal. This shift in perspective from outcome-focused to process-focused living creates a sense of fulfillment that doesn't depend on external achievements or recognition. You find satisfaction in the quality of your attention itself, in your capacity for deep engagement, and in your ability to show up fully for whatever life presents. The ultimate truth about focus mastery is that it's not really about focus at all. It's about developing the capacity to live with intention, presence, and depth in a world that constantly encourages surface-level engagement. It's about reclaiming your agency to direct your attention toward what truly matters and to engage with life in ways that create genuine meaning and satisfaction. When you complete this transformation, you join a small percentage of people who have chosen to live differently. You become someone who creates rather than just consumes, who builds rather than just reacts, who thinks deeply rather than just skims the surface. You become someone whose life reflects conscious choice rather than unconscious drift. This is your invitation to begin that transformation. Everything you need is within your reach. The only question is whether you're ready to commit to the journey of becoming the focused, present, deeply engaged person you're capable of being. The choice is yours, but the time is now.